Thank you, Kenny, Justin, and everybody else. Revelation tonight. We're going to go to Revelation chapter 11. It's about time. It's about time for some things, and so that's what we're going to look at here tonight. Do you have any of you ever look forward to something in your life? Something you look forward to? Your birthday? Because everybody loves to get a year older, right? One of my favorite things to look forward to is holidays. I love the holidays, you know, Thanksgiving and Christmas and all that. Just have a ball with them, and I look forward to them all year. But sometimes you look forward to things and it gets canceled. Does that ever happen to you? Really anticipating something, and then, you know, the weather's bad, or something falls through and you can't do it. Maybe you look forward to this vacation and you can't go on the vacation, or maybe you have a promotion. You're expecting a promotion, you know you're going to get it, and something falls through and you don't get it. And it's discouraging, right? It's downheartening. But when you anticipate something, you look forward to it, and it actually arrives, it's so satisfying, it's so nice. Well, the whole history of humanity has been looking forward to something. And we're going to talk about that tonight, because when we get here in Revelation, we find that this is actually, it's going to happen. It's going to come. This is still, of course, in the future for us. But all of humanity has been looking for something specific to happen. And before I tell you what that is, I want to just describe it by some things that we read in our newspaper just about every day, or watch it on television. How many times have you turned on your television or looked on your favorite news source, whatever it is, and saw that there were shootings in Chicago? Or shootings in L.A., or some other problem. There's, you know, maybe that somebody's rioting somewhere. There's something going on, right? And you look at this, what do you say? Most people say, when are the police going to do something about this problem? Right? When are they going to step up? When are they going to do something about it? Of course, you know, sometimes then they complain about police. We don't want them as authority. You got to pick a side, you know. You can't have it both ways. But so we say, when is this going to stop? When is this evil going to end? And then they hear about someone who goes through a court system, and they people think they got injustice. You know, they didn't get the judgment that many people thought that they deserved. And so what do the people say then? Well, someone needs to fix the court system, right? Because this person had injustice done against them. They had something wrong, and this is wrong, and we need wrong to stop. And then you get a president people don't like. That happens every once in a while. Maybe you don't believe it, but a president some people don't like. And what do? They say someone needs to step up, you know, and do something about that, impeach him, or, you know, or whatever. And then you hear that, right? And what people are saying is I don't like something and I want it to stop. There's evil out there and I want it to stop. Lately we hear a lot about, generally it's a man who has gotten into a position of prominence, very well known, and all of a sudden there's accusations, you know, concerning his relationship with women. And what do people say? He needs to resign. He needs to step down. He needs to be fired, right? Because people are saying there's evil that exists, and somebody needs to stop it. Now, of course, we don't think there's evil in my life and someone needs to stop it. It's always evil in someone else's life. But that's beside the point, okay? There's evil out there. There's things that are wrong out there, and somebody needs to stop it. We want evil to be destroyed. We want everything that's going wrong to be made right. We want all that to stop. But what we're looking at tonight in Revelation is we are going to take a sneak peek into the future when it is going to be happening. When finally we can sit back and we can say it's about time. It's about time. Finally, we're done with this message of evil. Now it's not happening quite at this point in Revelation, but we're really kind of summing up what's going to happen in the book of Revelation, where we are tonight. When God finally says, okay, you know what? Evil, I've had enough of it. Done with it. It's about time. It's all going to end. For thousands of years, mankind has just messed up this world big time. We blew it. I mean, all the way back in the Garden of Eden. And people blew it. I say we because we're people, right? And our great, many times over, grandfather and grandmother messed it up. And so now we deal with sin, and we're not helping matters a whole lot either, right? Every time that we sin, every time we do things that are wrong, we just kind of keep making things worse around us in this earth. And we look around and we say, what's the deal with all the evil? Well, it's going to end. So where we pick up on this subject here We're in Revelation chapter 11, and we are caught right here in all of these, the trumpet judgments, we call them. 7 angels have been given trumpets at this point, and every time one of the angels blows his trumpet, some judgment of God is poured out on the earth because of the sin. And so we've already had the 6th trumpet has been blown, and all these things are happening between the 6th and the 7th trumpet. And now tonight we're going to look at the blowing of the 7th trumpet, and that's when we can say it's about time. God's judgment is going to come on this earth. So let's write our first thing down, and then we're going to read this. It's about time for God's kingdom. You say, how are we going to end evil? When is it time to get rid of evil? Well, God's going to set up his kingdom eventually, and that is going to get rid of evil. So let's start reading in Revelation chapter 11 and verse 15. Then the 7th angel sounded, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. So we're getting to this point now. We know there's still more revelation to go, okay? It's not quite there yet, but he's summing up what's going to be happening. Finally, the kingdoms of the world have become the kingdoms of the Lord, and he's going to reign. He's going to do away with evil. He's going to do away with sin. He's wrapping things up now. All this that we've been dealing with through time with the wars and the hatred and the fighting and all this stuff going on, he's going to take care of it all. It's about time, we say. Wouldn't it be nice like he would just take care of it all now if God would say, guess what? No more evil in the world. The problem is if he were to get rid of all evil in the world, he'd have to get rid of us too. Because we've all got evil in us. But there's going to be a time when it's going to come, and he's going to set up his kingdom, and all that evil will be gone. Let's read a few more verses. Verse 16. And the 24 elders who sat before God on their thrones fell on their faces and worshiped God. Remember, there's 24 elders, and, we can discuss who these elders are. John just says they're elders gathered around the throne. Some people think they represent the church. I don't know we can say that 100% for sure. But they're there around the throne of God, and they all fall on their faces, and they worship God, saying, we give you thanks, O Lord God Almighty, who was and the one who is and who was and who is to come. Because you have taken your great power and reigned, the nations were angry, and your wrath has come, and the time of the dead that they should be judged. And that you should reward your servants, the prophets and the saints, and those who fear your name, small and great, and those who destroy, and should destroy those who destroy the earth. So let's break this down a little bit. The 24 elders, they all bow down before God on the throne, and they talk to him. And they tell him, you are wonderful, you are worthy of worship because of several different things. So we're just going to stop here a minute and look at this and understand, why are they worshiping God? Why is it that they are saying that God is worthy? Now, the ultimate point we're getting to is God's going to do away with evil, okay? But as they say, hey, God's going to do away with the evil, they bow down before God and they worship him, and they list 4 things that they're worshiping God for. And if we understand why these 24 elders kneel down and worship God there in the throne room, maybe those are reasons that we also should worship God. So we're going to take a little detour here and find out what is so important about God, where these 24 elders are going to kneel down and worship him. So these are the reasons that they kneel down and worship him. First of all, because he's eternal. That's what they say. They say, he is we give you thanks, O Lord God Almighty, the one who is and who was and who is to come. Now, if you is and was and is to come, you is eternal. Okay? That's just how it is. He was, he is to come. So they bow down and they worship this God who is eternal. And when you think about it, you say, okay, I understand God is eternal. I understand God is infinite. I don't understand how he is eternal and how he is infinite. But I accept that. And that's not dumb, blind faith. Because if you say there is no eternal God, then you got to answer the question, how did any of this get here? From nothing. Well, that is harder to believe, in my opinion, than the fact that there's an eternal God. Okay, so just to point this out, both belief in God is faith, and belief in no God is faither. Does that make sense? I think it takes more faith to believe there's no God, okay? So it's all faith, whether you're a theist or an atheist. But so he says, look, you're eternal, God, you're eternal, you're out there. What is such a big deal about him being eternal? Why is it such a big deal that God has always been here and that God always will be here? And to illustrate that, I think we can understand, remember when you're a kid, Or if you can't remember back that far, maybe you had kids or grandkids, or you watch the kids around the church, okay? And kids, what do they say? I don't know how many times it happens. You're in the car, you're driving home from church, or maybe somewhere that's a little farther away. What does somebody say? I get to the bathroom first. I get to the bathroom first when we get home. Or when you're just going to the car. One kid runs, maybe only mom or dad is there that night, and so one of the kids runs and gets in the front seat of the car. This was back before airbags and stuff. When I was a kid, it didn't matter who sat in the front. Now you got to be a certain age and everything. But the kid sits in the front, and the other kid comes up pulling on the door, saying, but I want to sit in the front. What does the kid already in there say? But I was here first. Your favorite seat on the couch when the family's watching TV. Move over. No, I was here first. The one who's there first calls the shots, right? We just understand that. I have the authority over this spot because I was here first, right? You've been there. You guys have said that probably too, right? This is my spot in church because I've been sitting here for 40 years. You guys don't do that. They do that in those liberal churches, okay? They do that to other people, But you've seen people. You know what the teachers used to say? Would you like to share that with the class? But that's the thing. Well, I was here first. We have this attitude, if I'm here first, then I'm the one who gets to call the shots over this, right? Well, let's take that and put it on God. If God was here first, isn't he the one in charge? Okay, so they worship him because, God, you are eternal. Well, that's not understanding a simple fact that, okay, God's eternal, wonderful, now I know that. But we understand God is eternal, which means that he's in authority. You worship him because of who he is. He's eternal. He's in authority. And if he's eternal, that means he's better and greater than we are. So therefore, we should worship him. And worship, by the way, simply just describes giving or showing worth to somebody, honoring them, showing who they are. And the best way to do that is by telling him, number two, by obeying him. So you worship God because he is eternal. The next thing they say is they're going to worship God because he is powerful. Now, someone who's powerful deserves worship. Look at what the elders say. We give you thanks, O Lord God Almighty, the one who is and who was and is to come. He's eternal. Because you have taken your great power and reigned. It says you have taken your great power and reigned. Now, when it says you've taken your great power, does that mean at some time he did not have his great power? Well, of course not, because he's eternal. He's always had his power. But for a while, as God is watching evil happen on this earth, he has not used his power to stop it. He's allowed it to happen. He's given us a free will where we get to decide some things that we're going to do, and we've decided to go the wrong way, and he could just obliterate evil right now. He could stop this whole thing, but he's holding that back, and he's allowing it to happen for his own reasons. And one day, though, he's going to say, okay, you know what? It's about time I put an end to this. He's going to take up his power, and he's going to say, in effect, okay, we're done with this mess. Time to stop. Time for evil to come to an end. Time to set up my kingdom. Time to bind the devil for 1,000 years and put him, in the pit. It's going to be time to do that. And so the elders, they kneel down, and they understand, God, you're eternal, but you're also powerful. The God that they're recognizing here is powerful enough to destroy evil. And he's the same God that we have that is powerful enough to do anything. As we're talking about prayer on Sunday mornings, and you come and you talk to God, you realize that God can do whatever he wants to do as long as it's within his nature. Whatever. He might not decide to do everything we ask him because he knows, the future. He knows what's best in the long run. But he has the power to do these things. And that's what the elders realize. You're eternal God and you have power. You can do whatever you want to do. But at this point in Revelation, we're going to see how he takes advantage of it. He says, okay, time to use my power now. I'm going to do something about evil now. Been letting it go on for all these years. Now it's going to be time to do something about it. What else do they worship God for? What else do they worship God for is that he is going to give rewards. We like that, don't we? I mean, you like the guy who gives rewards, especially if there's a cash prize, right? You love the person who gives rewards. Look at verse 18. This is the 24 elders. They're telling God why they're worshiping him. It says, the nations were angry and your wrath has come. And the time of the dead that they should be judged, and that you should reward your servants, the prophets and the saints, and those who fear your name, small and great, and should destroy those who destroy the earth. He's going to give rewards to his people. That's going to come, of course, down at the end of the tribulation here. But he says he's going to, the elders say, God, you are going to reward your people, small and great. It's easy to sit back and think, man, when it comes to the time of receiving rewards from God, I wish I could be one of these television preachers. I mean, one of those guys that everybody listens to or listens on the radio or watches on TV, man, they're going to have like a whole bunch of rewards, right? Or the ones who write all the books, who teach in the highfalutin seminaries, or the ones who, every time they turn around, they're witnessing someone and that person gets saved, and they just, just on and all these things. But he says that he's going to reward the small and the great. We don't think of ourselves a lot of times as the great. But you all going to get rewards. It brings me back to the story Jesus told about, one who only had 5 talents and one who had, I think, 3 or 2, and then 1. He told the story a couple different ways. And he says, what I give you, that's what you need to use. And if you only have 1 talent or hunk of money or whatever it happens to be, if you only have a little bit and you double that, you're just as good as a great one. So nobody's small and nobody's great. And by the way, I get a feeling, I don't know this for a fact, but I got a feeling that if we're all standing there when God is giving out rewards, and I don't know what it's going to look like, okay, but let's just imagine we're all standing there and God's giving rewards, and we see a whole line of these famous people, man. Their names are on the buildings and colleges because they've donated millions of dollars and they can, have their name, and they've written the books, they've got the TV shows, and they got all this. We think, man, that line over there, that's the one for the big prizes, right? And I wonder sometime we're going to see some of those people come through there and they walk away with a small stack of rewards. I know it's not physical like that, but just work with me on the illustration. And then here comes some little old lady from the church who nobody really thought much of, and she can't even carry them, right? Because she spent hours praying and helping people and doing things and nobody knew about it. And everyone else can be standing around saying, I didn't even know that one was going to be in, much less having all the rewards, right? I wonder if it's going to be backwards sometime from the way that we think. We think great means famous. God's thinking, no, great doesn't mean famous. He had to teach his disciples this. Great doesn't mean famous. Great doesn't mean the ones who are sitting up in front, the ones on a platform. Great is the one who serves. Great is the one who serves when nobody else has to know what they're doing. They're just serving because God's up there like writing it down. And I think there's some people, nobody else knows this, but God's pad of paper keeps flipping over and writing. I know he's not writing on paper, okay? But it's like he can't keep up because all the things they're doing. And some of the rest of us, God's like, I'm ready for the first one. And we think we're getting all the rewards, right? So who's small and who's great? I think we're going to be kind of surprised when it comes down to who's small and who's great, right? But the 24 elders, they kneel down, they fall before God, and they worship him because he's going to give rewards. We all like the idea of rewards because we like when we do something, we say, God saw it. God knows what I'm doing, and he's going to give me a reward. Man, this is going to be awesome. And so you worship God for that. Worship the one who gives rewards. But then we look at the 4th thing that they worship God for. First of all, he's eternal, he's powerful, he'll give rewards. But then they also worship him because he's going to punish wickedness. Now, wait a minute here. We're going to worship God because he punishes? We don't like the idea of punishment, especially when we realize that wickedness, there's some of that in our lives too. Okay, we don't like to think about wickedness. But look in verse 18 again. At the end it says, and should destroy those who destroy the earth. He's going to punish wickedness. We don't always like that very much. But in the end, we understand that this is why we worship God, because he is going to destroy punishment, or he is going to destroy wicked, and that's what we want gone. So the point ultimately that we want to get to here is when it comes down to the end, whose side are we going to be on? When it comes time for him to give rewards and to punish, I would recommend you get on the side that gets the rewards. Okay? But to get there, you got to become a believer in Jesus. And that gets you in the door. But if you don't do anything once you get in the door, you're not going to have any rewards. Those come after you're a believer. So we all ought to be anticipating this day. Yeah, we want God to get rid of evil, but we need to be ready for that day. So the 24 elders here, they all prostrate themselves and they worship God partly because he's punishing people for their sin. But that's what we wanted, right? Every time there's a shooting, we say, do something about it, right? Why doesn't somebody step up? Well, God eventually is going to step up and do something about it, which leads us to the next point here, which is that it's about time for God's wrath. Well, we don't like to think about wrath. Wait a minute here. What about our lovey-dovey God who gives us warm fuzzies? What about the God who said, judge not? Forget the rest of the verse. That's not important. He just said, judge not, right? And he loves us. And what about the God who forgave the woman caught in adultery? You hear all these things, right? What about our God who sweeps everything under the rug and just wants us to be one big slobbery, loving family, That's not who God is. God is a God of love. God is a God of forgiveness. But ultimately, he's going to get fed up with sin and he's going to do something with it. By the way, he is fed up with sin already. But he's just got patience and he's putting up because there's still some people that are going to become to him. So he said, look, it's about time for God's kingdom. It's about time for God's wrath. That's what the seventh angel, a trumpet blast, is about. Let's read verse 18 again and verse 19. The nations were angry. This is what the 24 elders are telling him. The nations were angry and your wrath has come in the time of the dead that they should be judged. It's about time they're judged. And you should judge, or you should reward your servants, the prophets and the saints, and those who fear your name, small and great, and should destroy those who destroy the earth. Then the temple of God was opened in heaven, and the ark of his covenant was seen in his temple. And there were lightnings, noises, thunderings, and earthquake, and great hail. So ultimately, God's wrath is going to win. His wrath is going to win. Again, we don't like to think about wrath, but it's his wrath against sin that's going to put an end to all this. We need to understand that God hates sin. God hates it when people rebel against him. And ultimately, he's going to do something about it. But when you read this verse here, in verse 18, it says, it's kind of a play on words. And reading it in the New King James, you don't completely get it. It says, the nations were angry, and your wrath has come. In the original languages, the words angry and wrath are basically the same word. So we could say the nations were angry and your anger has come. It gives you an idea. He's using the same term. The nations were angry against God. The nations were mad about God because God tells us what to do and we don't like it. And so the nations are angry against God, and so God's wrath comes down on them. Basically the same word there. People are angry at God. This has been this battle going on between God and people. And because God has been holding himself back, God has been patient with people, but nations get mad against God, people get mad against God, and eventually God's going to say, okay, you know what, that's enough. Time to destroy wickedness. And with destroying wickedness comes destroying people, which is the next thing that we have. The rebels will be defeated. God is going to destroy the people. Look, it says in verse 18, he's going to destroy those who destroy the earth. Who's destroying the earth? People who sin. Started back with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. They sin, and now there's a curse. It causes the thorns that you get in your garden. It's what makes the grass grow in your driveway and die in your yard. This is the curse, right? We've been destroying this earth for thousands of years, and finally God is going to destroy the people. And it's not God's fault that this earth has been corrupted. It's not the way he made it according to the Bible. Made it perfect. Everything was wonderful. We're the ones who messed it up. So God's judgment is going to come out upon people. It wasn't God's fault that the earth was destroyed with a flood. Yes, he's the one who brought it, but it wasn't his fault. It was his punishment upon the sin of man. It's not God's fault that here in the end of time, as we see a little bit today, but in Revelation much more, earthquakes and all these things that are going to destroy the earth. It's our fault. It's the fault of people. And so these 24 elders say that God is going to destroy those who destroy the earth. Who are the ones who destroy the earth? That's people. People who are in sin. And then at the end, in verse 19, John sees, we move from the 24 elders and what they're saying as they worship God to this big scene. Let me read it again. It says, then the temple of God was opened in heaven. And the ark of his covenant was seen in his temple, and there were lightnings, noises, thunderings, and earthquake, and great hail. Now, this is interesting because there's a temple in heaven. This is not the Old Testament temple that we read in Jerusalem. This is a temple in heaven. When the tabernacle was built, as they were traveling through the wilderness, and as they built the temple in Jerusalem, these were symbols of the real ones. There's some kind of a temple in heaven. And it's hard to describe what heaven is. I think it's a physical place, obviously, that we can't get to in some respects, but there's some temple there. John sees the heavens, and he sees the real temple, okay? He sees a real temple up there, but it was kind of different because it says it was opened in heaven. And not just open, but it says the ark of his covenant was seen in his temple. Now, that means something. Because it's not just John was saying, oh, look, there's a temple in heaven is open. I saw the Ark of the Covenant. You got to understand, when the Jewish people had their tabernacle, when they had the temple, they couldn't see the Ark of the Covenant. It was closed. They had two main rooms there in the temple and the tabernacle. The first one, some of the priests could go into, but the second one, where the Ark of the Covenant was, nobody could go in except the high priest once a year. And if someone tried to go in there, they wouldn't come out alive. They even put bells around his thing in case they stopped hearing the bells. Well, someone didn't have everything right. They can pull him out because they tie a rope around his ankle and pull him out, because nobody could go in there. So this was a serious thing. But as John, he sees this vision, he sees the real temple in heaven, and it's open, just like when Jesus died, the veil of the temple was torn so you could see in. The idea here, the picture is, now you don't have to be held outside of God's throne room or outside of God's presence itself. You can go directly to it. The Old Testament Hebrews could not go to the Ark of the Covenant when God's presence rested there, but today you can go directly into the presence of God. So there's a whole lot more here than just, oh, cool, there's a temple and you can see the Ark, okay? He's showing that, yes, even though God's wrath is going to come down on the wickedness of man, you got to understand the other side of God. His justice, but yet his love, where he accepts his people, where his people are allowed to come directly to him. So we always need to balance out who God is. We can't only think of God as a God of love, and we can't only think of God as a God of vengeance upon sin. He's both. He hates sin, he loves. The only way that can come together is through the cross of Jesus, because on that he took the payment for our sin that we deserved. And if we believe it, he will accept us. And so that's what this whole ark being opened in heaven is all about. So there's a whole lot there. And then so John sees this, and there's lightnings and noises and thunderings and earthquake and great hail. And so we come to the end of that chapter, and we have some wild things happening in the next chapter when we get there next time. But when he says, look, I see all these lightnings and noises and thunderings and earthquake and great hail and all this, what is he seeing all that for? He might be talking about the big show of judgment that God is putting on, or possibly it's reminding him of the lightning and thunder that happened when God gave the law on Mount Sinai. But the point is, as John's looking at this, he's reminding himself of the power of God. He sees the temple open there in heaven, and he hears thunder, he sees lightning, and he sees all this going on, and he's reminded the power of God, because now, as we finish going through the book of Revelation, things are going to get very nasty. It's going to get even worse. If you thought it was bad before, it's going to get even worse now, as he describes things are going to be happening in the future. And the time is going to come to an end. God's judgment is going to finally come out on this earth. And so we have to ask a question. When God is finally going to do away with evil by punishing, ultimately, people who are in sin, for us personally, is this going to be a good thing or a bad thing? When you were in school, you come to the end of the school year, there was often great anticipation. You couldn't wait for the end of the year, right? Because you're going to get out of school. But there's something that stood in the way between you and summertime, and what was that? Final exams, right? You remember some of those classes where you knew your stuff? And you could walk in there and you could take that test, breeze through it. You knew it inside out. You could have done it in your sleep. No problem. You get an A. But then there were some classes you wish you could die before you walked in there and take that test, right? You remember that? There were some of those for all of us. When we face a test, What matters to us personally is, am I ready for that test, right? If I'm ready, I remember in college, I was working in the computer lab. I was a computer guy in my last life, and I was working, so I knew this stuff. And my boss, who was my teacher, and he said, you could just bomb the final and still get an A in the class. Because I knew it. I did it every day. I could do it. But then things like statistics, I had a dream last night or night before that I was halfway through the semester in college and hadn't been going to statistics class. And I was going to probably bomb it anyway, but this is a recurring dream for me that I forget to go to college classes. You know, I have this dream all the time. But I remember statistics class, man, I hated the class. I did not understand it. I don't think the teacher did either, but that's a different point. But, you know, when I came time for testing that, I didn't look forward to that because I wasn't ready. Microcomputer applications, breeze, right? Because that's what I did every day. And so you got to understand, when something's coming, when the test is coming, if I am ready for it or not, totally decides if I'm looking forward to it or not. So we know God's going to come and he's going to destroy sin, right? He's going to destroy wickedness, and we can anticipate that day or we can dread that day. And it's totally up to us. Are we ready for it? If you're just going on in sin and, I don't care about God, I'm just going to live the way I want, you should be dreading when God comes and destroys wickedness. But if you've been saved, you're a believer, and you're living for him, you're like, I can't wait, man, bring it on. Because we're going to get rid of all this stuff. We're going to get rid of all this trouble, right? So we get to decide whether we look forward to this or not. One thing to write down, 2 words, and we're done. God will soon set up his kingdom and punish wickedness, right? This is coming. We don't know when, but I believe soon. This is a warning to the wicked and a relief to the righteous. It's a warning to the wicked. If you're going on to wickedness, you ought to be warning yourself. Wait a minute here. God's going to come and he's going to judge sin. Maybe I need to do something about this. He's going to destroy the wicked. But you know, if you're righteous, it doesn't mean you're perfect. It means you accepted God's forgiveness, right? And if you do that, you're going to attempt to try to live right. Then this is a relief. Oh, yes, can't wait. Wish it would happen now. Because I know that God's wrath isn't coming on me. So I'm ready for it. So everybody gets to decide, right? If you're here tonight, you say, well, I'm in the righteous crowd, man. That's all right. Cool, wonderful. But what if you're in the wicked crowd? What if this is all a game? What if maybe you're even kind of new to this and you're not buying into whatever? What if you're still in the wicked group? There's a warning there. Because when God comes to destroy wickedness, you're involved in that. So which side are you on? If you're on the wrong side, you need to come to Jesus. You need to come and you need to ask for forgiveness and put your faith in him. I'm going to ask you to stand with me, if you will, please. I'm going to close us in a word of prayer. And I appreciate you guys coming out and listening to some revelation tonight. And if you're here and you're on that wicked side, I'm going to encourage you before you leave here tonight, we want to help you to answer some questions about this. You can make some things right. Father, we thank you tonight for allowing us to be here. We thank you for the book of Revelation and a sneak preview about what is going to be and what we can do about it. I ask God for anyone who's in here tonight or maybe listening to this later that doesn't know you, that they will come to know you and they'll be on the righteous side so they don't have to dread the time when you come and make things right. We pray for safety as we travel home tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.